She drove me to her ex's house for closure and came back 4 hours later disheveled, claiming she just needed to understand their relationship. I knew she was lying, but I played along perfectly right until I closed our joint bank account the next morning and her ex's wife called to thank me for the photos. Hey viewers, welcome to the channel. You're just starting and your support means a lot. If you enjoy these stories, please consider subscribing and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these posts, but here I am at 5 a.m., unable to sleep, and needing to get this off my chest before I lose my mind completely. My girlfriend Emma, 26F, and I had been together for 2 years. We moved in together 8 months ago, opened a joint savings account for our future, and I genuinely thought she was the one. She was smart, funny, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room when she looked at me. I should have known it was too good to be true. The problems started about 3 weeks ago when her ex-boyfriend Tyler, 28M, reached out to her on social media. She told me about it immediately, which I appreciated. She said he wanted to talk through some things from their relationship that ended badly 2 years before we met. Emma explained that their breakup was messy, that there were things left unsaid, and that she thought it might be healthy to get closure. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I trusted her. We'd always been honest with each other, or so I thought. She suggested meeting Tyler for coffee in a public place, and I said that sounded reasonable. Even offered to drop her off if she wanted, trying to be the supportive boyfriend. But then the plan changed. Tyler apparently didn't want to meet in public because the conversation might get emotional. He suggested she come to his house instead. When Emma told me this, I felt my stomach drop, but I didn't want to be the controlling boyfriend who couldn't trust his partner. She assured me it would be quick, maybe an hour tops, and that she'd text me throughout. The day of the meeting, Emma was acting strange. She showered twice, spent an hour doing her makeup, and wore this dress I'd only seen her wear on special occasions. When I asked about it, she said she just wanted to feel confident for what might be a difficult conversation. It made sense, but something felt off. She asked me to drive her to Tyler's house because she was too nervous to drive herself. I agreed, thinking it would give me a chance to at least see where she was going and maybe even meet this guy. When we pulled up to his house, she quickly kissed me goodbye and said she'd call me when she was ready to be picked up. The house was nice, way nicer than our apartment. It was a 2-story colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn and a BMW in the driveway. I found myself wondering what Tyler did for work and why Emma had never mentioned he was apparently well off. Emma said she'd be done in an hour, but 1 hour turned into 2, then 3. She texted me once after the first hour saying they were still talking and she needed more time. After that, radio silence. I tried calling her around the 3-hour mark, but she didn't answer. I was starting to panic, imagining all sorts of scenarios. Finally, after 4 hours, she called. Her voice sounded different, breathless and shaky. She said she was ready to be picked up and gave me the address again like I hadn't just dropped her off there. When I pulled up, she practically ran to the car. The first thing I noticed was her appearance. Her hair was a mess, not just windblown but actually disheveled. Her makeup was smudged, and there was a red mark on her neck that she kept trying to hide with her hand. The dress she'd spent so much time choosing was wrinkled and sat differently on her body. In the car, she was quiet and kept staring out the window. When I asked how it went, she gave me this rehearsed-sounding explanation about how they'd had a really deep conversation about their relationship, that there had been some crying, and that she finally felt like she had closure. She said Tyler had been going through a rough time and needed to understand where things went wrong between them. Here's the thing that really got to me: she smelled different. Not just her perfume, but there was an unfamiliar scent clinging to her clothes, and when she hugged me later that night, something felt wrong. She was being overly affectionate, almost guilty affectionate, if that makes sense. I wanted to believe her explanation, but my gut was screaming that something wasn't right. I'd never been the jealous type, but I couldn't shake the feeling that those 4 hours weren't spent just talking. The way she looked, the way she was acting, the suspicious timing of her unresponsiveness, it all felt like lies wrapped in half-truths. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the day in my head, analyzing every detail. Emma seemed to sleep just fine, which somehow made it worse. The next morning, she was back to her normal self, making breakfast and chatting about her plans for the day like nothing had happened. I decided to do something I'd never done before in our relationship. I checked her phone. I know it was a violation of privacy, but I was desperate for answers. She deleted all her messages with Tyler, which only made me more suspicious. Who deletes messages from a closure conversation unless there's something to hide? I spent the next few days acting normal while internally falling apart. Emma seemed completely fine, which made me wonder if I was going crazy. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the closure conversation really had been emotional and innocent, but I couldn't let it go. Then I remembered something. Tyler's house had security cameras. I'd noticed them when I dropped Emma off, modern-looking cameras positioned around the property. I could somehow get access to that footage. I'd know for sure what happened during those 4 hours. I did some research and found Tyler's full name through Emma's old social media posts. From there, I discovered something interesting. Tyler was married. His wife, Jessica, 25F, had a public Instagram account full of happy couple photos. They'd been married for a year and seemed genuinely happy together. This changed everything. If Tyler was married, what was he doing inviting his ex-girlfriend over for a 4-hour closure conversation, and did his wife know about it? I wrestled with whether to reach out to Jessica. Felt like crossing a line, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were both being deceived. Finally, I decided to send her a polite message explaining that my girlfriend had met with her husband, and I was concerned about the nature of their meeting. Jessica responded within hours, and her message made my blood run cold. She had no idea Emma had been to their house. Tyler had told her he was spending the afternoon with his college buddy Mike, 29M, and she'd even packed him snacks for their guys' day. She was confused and wanted to know more. We agreed to meet for coffee the next day. Jessica turned out to be a lovely person, kind and genuine, and clearly devastated by what she was learning. She confirmed that Tyler had never mentioned needing closure with an ex, and that he'd been acting strange lately, distant and secretive. Jessica had access to their home security system through an app on her phone. With trembling hands, she pulled up the footage from the day Emma visited. What we saw destroyed both of us. Footage showed Emma arriving at the house and Tyler greeting her with a hug that lasted way too long. They disappeared inside for about 30 minutes, then the camera caught them in the backyard. Tyler was shirtless, and Emma was in her underwear. They were in the pool together, laughing and touching in ways that were definitely not platonic. The worst part was what happened next. They went back inside, and when they emerged 2 hours later, it was obvious what had happened. Emma was fixing her hair and clothes, and Tyler was grinning like he'd won the lottery. They kissed goodbye on the front porch, and it wasn't a friendly peck. Jessica was crying, and honestly, so was I. We'd both been betrayed by the people we loved most. But instead of just wallowing in our pain, we decided to take action. The plan was simple but effective. I would act completely normal with Emma while Jessica confronted Tyler. She would get him to admit what happened, hopefully in writing, and then we'd both confront our partners with the evidence. Meanwhile, I had one more thing to take care of. Our joint savings account had about $15,000 in it, money we'd been saving for a down payment on a house. I went to the bank first thing in the morning and closed the account, transferring all the money to my personal account. Legally, I had every right to do this since both our names were on the account. Jessica worked fast. She confronted Tyler that evening, and he broke down and confessed everything. He admitted that he'd been thinking about Emma since she contacted him, that he'd lied about needing closure, and that he'd orchestrated the whole thing to get her alone. He even admitted they'd been texting secretly for weeks before the meetup, planning their encounter. Jessica forwarded me screenshots of Tyler's confession text, where he detailed exactly what had happened between him and Emma. It was more than I needed to know, but it gave me the ammunition I needed for the confrontation. Next morning, Emma woke up to find her debit card declined when she tried to buy coffee. She called me in a panic, asking what happened to our account. I told her calmly that I'd closed it and that she should come home immediately because we needed to talk. She walked through the door. I was sitting at our kitchen table with printed copies of Tyler's confession, screenshots of the security footage, and a letter I'd written explaining that I knew everything. Emma's face went white when she saw the papers. She tried to deny it at first, claiming Tyler was lying and that the security footage was somehow misleading. When I showed her the detailed confession where Tyler described intimate details about her body that only a lover would know, she finally broke down. Emma cried and begged for forgiveness. She said it was a mistake, that she'd been confused about her feelings, and that she'd realized she wanted to be with me, not Tyler. She promised it would never happen again, and that she'd do anything to make it right. Here's the thing about betrayal: once it happens, it changes everything. I looked at this woman I'd loved and trusted, and I felt nothing but disgust. She hadn't just cheated on me, she'd manipulated me into driving her to her affair. She'd looked me in the eye and lied repeatedly. She'd made me complicit in my own humiliation. I told Emma she had until the end of the week to move out. I kept the apartment since the lease was in my name, and I kept the money since I'd been the one contributing the majority of our savings anyway. She tried to argue about the money, but I pointed out that she'd thrown away our future the moment she chose to betray me. Final twist came a few days later. Jessica called to thank me for the evidence that helped her decide to leave Tyler. She was filing for divorce and wanted to make sure I knew that she was grateful for my honesty. She also told me something interesting. Tyler had been cheating on her for months, and Emma wasn't the first ex-girlfriend he'd reconnected with. Emma had been played just as much as I had. Tyler had never wanted closure. He'd wanted to add another conquest to his collection. The realization that she'd thrown away our relationship for a guy who was just using her seemed to hit Emma hard when I told her. She'd gambled everything on a fantasy that was never real. It's been 3 weeks since Emma moved out, and I'm doing better than I expected. The betrayal still hurts, but I'm proud of how I handled it. I didn't scream or break things or make a scene. I gathered evidence, made strategic decisions, and took control of my own narrative. Jessica and I have become friends through this experience, both healing and supporting each other through our divorces and breakups. There's nothing romantic between us. We're just two people who were betrayed by people we trusted, and we understand each other's pain. I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or explosive. Sometimes it's just refusing to be anyone's fool and taking back your power quietly and decisively. Emma wanted closure with Tyler, and she got it, but the closure she received wasn't what she expected, and it cost her everything she actually wanted. As for me, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life without someone who could look me in the eye and lie so easily. I deserve better than that, and I'm finally starting to believe it. The hardest part about the whole experience wasn't even the betrayal itself, it was realizing how naive I'd been. Looking back, there were signs I'd ignored or explained away. Emma had been increasingly distant in the weeks leading up to her closure meeting. She'd started working out more, buying new clothes, and paying more attention to her appearance. At the time, I thought she was just going through a positive phase, maybe feeling more confident about herself. I also remembered how she'd been protective of her phone lately, taking it with her to the bathroom and sleeping with it face down. I'd asked about it casually. She'd said she was trying to reduce her screen time and didn't want to be tempted by notifications. It seemed reasonable, even admirable. Now I realized she was probably texting Tyler during those private moments. The mutual friends who knew both Emma and me have been interesting to navigate. Some have reached out to check on me, while others seem to have chosen sides. Emma's best friend Rachel, 27F, actually called me to apologize. She said Emma had confided in her about having confusing feelings about Tyler, but that Rachel had encouraged her to work through things with me instead of pursuing anything with her ex. She felt guilty for not warning me directly. What surprised me most was learning that Emma had been romanticizing her relationship with Tyler for months. According to Rachel, Emma had been comparing our relationship to her past with Tyler, wondering if she'd made a mistake in choosing stability over passion. She'd apparently been following Tyler's social media obsessively and had even driven by his house a few times before he reached out to her. This revelation was almost worse than the cheating itself. It meant that Emma had been emotionally checked out of our relationship long before that day at Tyler's house. I'd been investing in a future with someone who was already mentally planning her exit strategy. All those conversations about our dreams, our savings goals, our potential engagement, she'd been going through the motions while fantasizing about someone else. Jessica and I have continued our friendship, and through her, I've learned even more disturbing details about Tyler's behavior. He'd apparently been reaching out to multiple ex-girlfriends over the past year, using the same closure excuse. Jessica found evidence of at least 3 other women he'd manipulated into meetings, though she doesn't know if all of them resulted in affairs. The man was basically running a systematic campaign to reconnect with former partners while maintaining his marriage. What's particularly sick is that Tyler had been love-bombing Jessica throughout this period, probably to assuage his own guilt. He'd been bringing her flowers, planning surprise dates, and talking about starting a family. Jessica thought their marriage was stronger than ever, while he was systematically betraying her behind her back. Emma tried to contact me several times after moving out. She sent long text messages explaining her side of the story, claiming that she'd been confused and that Tyler had manipulated her emotions. She said she regretted everything and wanted to fight for our relationship. She even showed up at my workplace once, causing a scene when security had to escort her out. In her messages, Emma painted herself as a victim of Tyler's manipulation, claiming he'd pressured her into physical intimacy and that she'd been too emotionally vulnerable to resist. I don't doubt that Tyler is a skilled manipulator. Emma's version of events conveniently removed all her agency and responsibility. She'd made choices every step of the way, from entertaining Tyler's initial contact to lying to me about their meeting to actively participating in the deception. The most telling message came about 2 weeks after she moved out. Emma had apparently learned that Tyler had blocked her on all social media and wasn't responding to her attempts to contact him. She was devastated, realizing that he'd used her and discarded her exactly as I'd predicted. In her message to me, she wrote that she finally understood what she'd lost and begged for another chance. That message actually made me feel sorry for her rather than angry. Emma had sacrificed a real, stable relationship for a fantasy that was never going to become reality. She'd been so focused on what she thought she was missing that she'd thrown away what she actually had. Karma of the situation was that she'd ended up with neither relationship. Tyler had moved on to his next conquest, and I was done with her forever. I've been going to therapy to process everything that happened. My therapist has helped me understand that Emma's betrayal says nothing about my worth as a partner and everything about her character and decision-making. It's also helped me recognize that my methodical approach to uncovering the truth, while effective, came from a place of needing to validate my own intuition after being gaslit for weeks. The financial aspect of our breakup has been surprisingly smooth. Since Emma contributed less to our joint savings and had been living in my apartment rent-free for months, she didn't have much ground to stand on when it came to demanding money. Her threats to take legal action fizzled out when she realized she had no legal claim to funds I'd earned and saved. I've also learned that Emma's family is disappointed in her behavior. Her mother called me to apologize, saying she'd raised Emma to be better than that. Her father, who I'd always had a good relationship with, sent me a text saying he was sorry for how things ended and that he hoped I'd find someone who deserved me. It meant a lot to know that the people who knew Emma best recognized that her actions were inexcusable. Most unexpected outcome of this whole situation has been the personal growth I've experienced. I've learned to trust my instincts again and to recognize red flags in relationships. I've also learned that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't revenge. It's simply refusing to accept unacceptable behavior and walking away with your dignity intact. Emma's betrayal taught me that love isn't enough if it's not paired with respect, honesty, and commitment. I'd rather be single than be with someone who sees me as a safety net while they explore other options. I deserve to be someone's first choice, not their fallback plan. Looking back, I'm actually grateful that Emma's affair happened when it did, rather than after we'd gotten engaged or married. Pain of betrayal would have been compounded by legal complications and wasted years. In a twisted way, Tyler did me a favor by exposing Emma's true character before I made an even bigger commitment to her. These days, I'm focused on building the life I want rather than trying to rebuild what was broken. I've started dating again, but I'm taking it slow and being more selective about who I invest my time and emotions in. The experience with Emma taught me that compatibility isn't just about shared interests and attraction. It's about shared values and the ability to communicate honestly, even when it's difficult. I still think about Emma sometimes, but it's not with longing or regret. It's more like thinking about a close call, relief that I dodged a bullet rather than sadness about what I lost. The woman I thought I loved was never real anyway. She was a carefully constructed image designed to hide someone who was capable of profound selfishness and deception. Real Emma was someone who could plan an affair for weeks, manipulate me into facilitating it, and then lie to my face about it afterward. The real Emma was someone who valued her own desires over our relationship, my feelings, and even basic human decency. I don't miss her because I never really knew her. Instead, I'm grateful for the lesson and excited about the future. I know now what I won't accept in a relationship, and I'm confident that I'll recognize genuine love and respect when I find it. Emma did me a favor by showing me exactly what I don't want in a partner. For that, at least, I can honestly say I'm thankful.